don't know quite often when we get so buried in our work is what's going on in the outside world and what is coming around the pike that will affect us. That's one of the reasons we chose this theme of the Internet of Things. And when I started researching experts on the Internet of Things, Scott Amyx was somebody I could not avoid. He is a thought leader in wearables and IoT. He writes for Wired, Information Week, IEEE, Tech Beacon, and many more publications. He is a Sloan Fellow at Carnegie Mellon University. He has started numerous companies that he's been involved in selling and acquisition. As a speaker, he travels the world. He was recently voted one of the top 25 global speakers by Speakers.com. So, without any further ado, Scott, please come forward.
Thank you very much, Donna. Appreciate it very much. And by the way, that was me this morning before I shaved. So, looking pretty good, right? So in case you're wondering, I was born in Korea, but I was raised in America, which makes me totally confused. And it doesn't help that people keep asking me if I'm from the North. North Korea. I was in Korea last summer, and my family and I were taking a taxi. And I wanted to go to Costco, because we have a family, right? We tend to eat a little bit more. Well, anyways, I told the taxi driver, Costco로 가고 싶습니다, which means I want to go to Costco. And for the life of me, he could not understand what I was saying. And after the fifth time, I realized something, which is my pronunciation wasn't right. It wasn't Costco, it was Costco. So anyway, since then, my daughter reminds me that, Dad, when you speak with Grandma, you have to speak to her in this manner. Grandma, we went to France, took the bus, and went to the Louvre. All right, so what I want to talk to you today is about the Internet of Things. And I'll start with the big picture and then work my way down to some of the more fundamental and important megatrends that's going to affect your industry and likely your jobs. I want to then map how the Internet of Things is relevant for localization. Because I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, well, isn't that about industries and manufacturing? And lastly, it's here to stay. The Internet of Things is about bringing sensing capabilities and computing capabilities into our daily lives. And it has the potential to rival that of the Industrial Revolution. That's how big it is. And it has the potential to enable and awaken 99% of inanimate objects around us. That means the seats that you're sitting on, the walls, everything that's here, that's physical, that cannot communicate, we can start to collect information. Now let's talk about the forecast. According to this forecast, by 2020, there's going to be 50 billion connected devices. And more so, on average, we're going to own about 7 internet-enabled devices. Now what's interesting is that, I don't know about for you, but certainly within our household, we already have way more than 7 internet-connected devices. The Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything, depending on who you are, is projected to generate some $14.4 trillion in value. Moreover, that value is going to basically create this opportunity where to be able to grow your global corporate profits by some 21%. Pretty significant. And frankly, it's an open field. For those firms that are willing to take advantage of it and pursue these opportunities within wearables and IoT will gain significant profits. Whereas on the other hand, those firms that are slow to adopt are going to adversely affect their profits and market share. And potentially in the long run, jeopardize their viability. Now, when we talk about the Internet of Things, it can sound a bit nebulous. So this slide is meant to give you somewhat of a breakdown in terms of some of the subcategories as well as the industries that it's affecting. Well, first and foremost, when we say IoT, it starts with things that's closest to us. And these are our wearables. So these are sensing devices, intelligent devices that are either on our bodies, on our clothing, or sometimes inside of us. And moving a little bit outward, then we have the connected cars, connected homes, smart cities, industrial Internet of Things, and healthcare and other industries. And at the bottom here, you have the horizontal capabilities that cuts across all of that, such as the IoT platform, security solutions, networking solutions, apps and devices, robotics, artificial intelligence, and certainly big data. Now let's talk about the wearables specifically. Wearables is expected to grow to some 148 million units sold by 2019. It's massive. And you can see here that majority of that is in the smartwatch category, which is the lion's share. It's about 70% of that opportunity. Now, whereas fitness bands that I'm sure most of you probably have come across or own several and have slid into your drawers and don't use, will shrink down to about 20% by 2019. By the way, I was speaking with somebody, and she was telling me that she was in this meeting with another executive, and he kept on glancing at his watch. I mean, how rude, right? Well, it turns out that he was actually looking at his smartwatch every time an email came in. So like any dignified executive would do, she propped her feet up on the table and started to check her tweets on her smart shoes. All right, so what you're seeing here is a granular breakdown of wearables by categories. Now, it's by a different analyst, and that's why the figures are slightly different. But nonetheless, you still see that the smartwatch category is still one of the key winners. But in addition, there's something else that surfaces, which is the smart garment. Now, I'm personally very bullish about this category, and the reason is not only about smart fashion, but the fact that when we talk about smart garments and textiles, it has implications to home linens, fabrics and cars, public spaces, as well as even flooring and walls. I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, gosh, is that really true? Yes, I spoke on this very topic in Korea. I can assure you, this is exactly where things are going. Now, some of you probably have seen this illustration before. Well, I went ahead and added some additional companies and startups by body location. And frankly, it's growing so fast and so rapidly, I can't even update it fast enough. But can you imagine from head to toe being covered with wearable devices? I can't imagine that. It'd be so awkward, right, when you're walking around? Hey, how's it going, Bob? Oh, good. You? Right? What you're seeing here is wearables by health function. So if you thought that wearables were about step counting, you're actually mistaken. Because what we're starting to see is that there are companies that are developing sensor technologies that are specific to a physiological data point, as you can see here. So, where are the future of smart wearables, watches, jewelry, gadgets, and clothing going? Well, here's a list of that gives you a bit of a glance in terms of where things are going. And you're probably thinking, well, I don't know, is that really plausible? It is. We are actually transitioning from inaccurate signal processing to FDA medical grade sensor technologies. And this is significant. Part of the reason that our agency is so heavily focused in healthcare and medical implications of wearables is because we know where this is going. This is going to revolutionize your workforce, your HR benefits, your insurance premiums, your bonuses perhaps. I was recently asked by Speaking.com what I thought were some of the big mega trends that's coming down the pipeline in terms of the Internet of Things. And I told them that there are incredible, massive lists of things that's going to be emerging from wearables and IoT. Everything from artificial intelligence to machine learning to deep learning neural networks, mHealth, robotics, fintech. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Speaking of more, some of you are probably thinking, at what point will machines become smarter than humans, right? Well, they've actually become smarter than humans already. Yes, it's true. And certainly for politicians anyways. You know, to show who's smarter than a fifth grader? Well, they've actually changed that. Now it's who's smarter than a coffee machine. So that's going to be the new format for the presidential debates. One of the categories that we believe there's going to be transformational change is healthcare. And the reason is this. Wearables provide something unique that, frankly, hasn't been available before. The fact that there's a patch on my chest, the fact that there's an Eeg headband that I'm wearing, the fact that my socks or even my underwear has sensors means that it's providing continuous, constant monitoring. Now, if you know anything about healthcare, you know that as soon as that patient steps out of the hospital, they're completely going to a blind spot. You have no idea what's happening. And the cost of bringing them back to the hospital via the ambulance when something doesn't go right is incredibly expensive and costs the country some 7% of GDP. So being able to monitor them is massive. And being able to do it in a sustainable, scalable way that delivers cost efficiency without being invasive in terms of, if you think about diabetes and the kinds of things you have to do to protect yourself, these are non-invasive techniques that we're talking about. Eeg headbands. Eeg headbands, or mind control, will go from basic control function and monitoring of your EEG brain activity to unimaginable human-computer interface, or HCI. And the way it's going to work is it's going to work in conjunction with an ambient personal assistant. Raise your hand if you've heard of Microsoft Cortana or played some of those Halo games. That's when I say virtual ambient assistant, that's the kind of concept that I'm talking about. It is not a physical machine that you have to carry with you. It is always with you, no matter where you are. And that, in turn, with the EEG headband means that now you can control lots of things. Now, of course, this is a little bit years out, but this is happening. Now, I'm personally actually very excited about this category because my wife, for example, she gets tired of having to remind me 100 times where things are or to do something. My son and I, we have this thing like, I think it's a gender difference because I can't seem to ever find my socks. My son can't seem to find, lots of other things. But the great thing is, instead of her having to tell me to do something so many times, she's just going to put on this headband and say, "You will take out the garbage and do the dishes." And I, of course, being wearables, will counter that and say, "No, I will not, but you will." Augmented reality and virtual reality. Let me just pause there for those of you that are not clear in terms of the definition. Augmented reality means that I'm able to see reality, meaning here, the flowers, the curtains, but I see a virtual element that's superimposed. Whereas virtual reality means that it's a 3D, completely 180-degree enveloped view where I see nothing but this virtual world. And if you've never done that, it's a lot of fun. And if you've seen some of the videos on YouTube, people are riding a roller coaster, or they literally feel like they're falling. Just incredible. But it is revolutionizing film, entertainment, and gaming. But the real potential of AR and VR is actually the workplace. It's with all of you. It has the potential to help you to completely unchain yourself from your desk and your computers. That means that you will not need conference rooms, whiteboards, desks, tables, nothing. Via your VR, AR glasses, you will be able to do all your computing tasks in the thin air. So this spatial area here that you see becomes my screen. And I can have PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets and all kinds of things all at the same time, as well as be able to virtually control physical assets purely remotely. Anywhere, anytime, with anybody. AR, VR. Can it actually impact advertising? Yes. When we drive on the freeway, we see those big billboards, right? Well, one day, those billboards are going to go away. Digital signage in retail is going to go away. Connected TVs to some extent are going to go away. What you're going to have is that. What that means is, based on your location, your context, your interest, it will actually show you an animated advertisement. So if I'm at Times Square in New York, I can actually see a T-Rex thundering down the street, charging at a group of raptors. And that would be an advertisement for Jurassic Park, as an example. By the way, if you thought that you hated ads, it's going to get worse. Imagine going to your kid's Little League game using AR. McDonald's, yes, McDonald's, will change your kids into chicken nuggets. So here comes Johnny. Johnny going to the 30. He's running to base. Go, Johnny, chicken nugget number 5. And of course, the home base would have been changed or augmented into a pool of ketchup. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time telling how people feel. Intuition eludes me. And maybe that happens to you as well. But one of the areas that our agency is researching is this area called cognitive and emotional analytics. So for those of you that are somewhat familiar with sentiment analysis has to do with the fact that you're trying to decipher whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, or neutral. On the other hand, affective computing is really about understanding how one feels across primary and advanced emotions. That's what we're talking about. Cognitive is really exciting, which I'm not going to go into just yet. But what this means is that through wearables and environmental IoT, we can begin to actually understand how you feel and perceive your situations. Now, the implication of this is pretty significant. It means that your companies, your clients, will be able to actually understand what interests their end customer or clients, what their frame of mind is, what their state of emotion is, and be able to personalize contextual messaging and promotions that's going to be just right. The right time, right place, when the recipient is most receptive to that message. By the way, I showed this slide to my son. He was like, "Is that boy on top P?" I said, "No. So this is about networking." I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of these exorbitant wireless bills. And the exciting part about where this is going is that there are new advancements in networking technologies that's going to help us to access the internet for free or at a significantly reduced price. Using new technologies such as mesh networking, sometimes also known as peer-to-peer networking, combined with low-power, wide-area network, and even new protocols such as IPFS, or Interplanetary File Systems, which is a peer-to-peer hypermedia protocol. So all of these working together will be able to actually help you access the internet faster, more reliably, and cheaper. I can't wait. Now, I'm a parent of 2 kids, and I'm sure many of you are parents. And sometimes there are days when it feels like we're just talking to the wall, right? Right? Well, it's going to happen. Seriously. Advancements in human-like 3D avatars working in conjunction with natural language processing and affective computing will actually allow walls and buildings and objects and cars and everyday things to come alive. And they will talk to you, and they will look like this. This is not a human, this is a computer-generated avatar. It took me a couple of seconds for me to realize that. I'm excited, but I'm also a little bit nervous, frankly, because what that means is you no longer have to, allocate time with a shrink. You can just talk to the wall. It's a different world. Advanced data analytics. If you thought big data was hot, it is going to get hotter. And these devices are going to be driven by artificial intelligence. And data analytics will take center stage. That means that whether you're in retail, manufacturing, you will be able to derive actionable insights through deep learning neural networks. You'll be able to gain clear, vivid picture from data patterns and predictive data analytics that will in turn help you to be informed so that you can actually make better decisions in terms of how to optimize sales and marketing, manufacturing, supply chain, distribution. And by the way, sales organizations are going to find great new insights, such as you will make more money if you make more calls. Who knew? Beyond factory robots, consumer robots are coming. Here it is. Matter of fact, Alibaba, SoftBank, and Foxconn have joined and formed a joint venture with the purpose of mass producing robot Pepper on a global scale. And this humanoid is capable of determining your emotions. And you can buy it for $1,600. So there you go, put it on your holiday list. Now personally, I'm really excited about the prospect of home robots, aside from the fact that they're going to be $1.5 billion in market opportunity, is because I now will have someone else to blame. Kids, I didn't take the last cookie, but Pepper over there looks a little guilty. And apparently, these robots have feelings. So that means that now I have to be nice to my family and the robots or risk being sued. These are my 2 kids. And they're learning 3 languages. Actually, 4 languages. Korean, Latin, French, and backtalk. In terms of Korean, they spend 4 hours every Saturday going to Korean school. And we're trying to spend about 2 to 3 months out of the year in Korea for language immersion. And for Latin, they take it as part of their school curriculum. And for French, they take Rosetta Stone, and we just spent a couple of months in France this year. So anyways, what's the result of all this? They're really, really good at Gangnam Style and love gets. You know, I travel a lot. I've been to pretty much most of the continents this year. And one of the things I recognize is that the more I travel, the more I see the complexity and the diversity of cultures, countries, and histories, frankly. And it's so vast and it's just too much for any one person to be able to do it all or understand it. And it's only getting more complex. But with technology, the physical boundaries that define these sovereignties and jurisdictions and so forth are shrinking through social media and new technologies. But we know that localization isn't just about language, is it? I'll give you an example. Apple Siri in English will talk to you something like this. What's wrong with you? Can't even parallel park? Whereas Apple Siri in Korean would speak to you much more gently and say, it's not your fault, it's your mother-in-law's. For New Yorkers, I have my apologies. And you can't find me because I'll be gone. All right, so one of the things that I realize is that when it comes to localization, it's not just about countries. Even within the same language and a geographic area, there are nuances that we have to account for. So I'm originally from the West Coast, and that probably explains why I carry a surfboard behind me. But when I go to New York City, I am frankly shocked by the way some of these people talk. I went to one of those New York delis, and I was standing in line, and the guy in front of me said to the guy behind the counter, said, "Hey, you SOB!" I'm like, wow, who talks like that? So of course, when it was my turn, I went up and said, "Hey, you son of a blip, can I get a sandwich?" Boy, that guy behind the counter was upset. Was he mad or what? It turns out SOB stands for salami and baguette. All right, so what does IoT mean for localization? It means that with all the sensing capabilities, it will know more about you, and you will also be awakened. I actually am working on a TED Talk called The Digital Currency of Happiness, which has to do with the fact that most of us live our lives in habits, meaning the way we get up and brush our teeth and so forth, it's just out of habit. Well, some of those habits, frankly, keeps us stuck. If you want to be aspirational, you have to be awakened in terms of your habits, your behavior, your attitudes, and your perception. But with that awakening, that also means companies, including your company, will know more about your customers. We already know that machines are going to be smarter. So smart that they're going to actually speak to you in a natural human language, NLP. And with all this intelligence and smartness, it means that your customers, the end customers, will have higher expectations. And that also means with the immediacy of wearables, there's a slide later on you'll see, that localization is going to have to happen instantaneously now. Moreover, localization isn't just about websites, mobile, and print anymore. And lastly, it's going to change it all. We are going to know more about ourselves than the IRS. The wireless sensor network filled with these devices and nodes are going to be continuously sending data and information. Whether it's the temperature in your home, or the air pressure in your car, or your blood pressure. Now, most of you are probably thinking, wow, that raises some privacy and security flags for me, and rightfully so. Matter of fact, I've written a fairly exhaustive playbook on privacy on Information Week. So take a look at that, and I'm also contributing to an academic textbook on this very topic. So privacy is a real issue. Matter of fact, the water cooler chat at your work is about to change. Jane, your eyes are so bloodshot. You look so tired. Yeah, I didn't sleep really well. Got into a big fight with my husband last night. The coworker says, yeah, I know. I can't believe he thinks your career is less important than his. The nerve, right? And Jane says, what? How do you know that? Coworker says, I know everything. Matter of fact, accounts payable, operations, customer service. We all know it. Oh, by the way, say hello to Dave for us. I'm exaggerating, but it's going to happen. It's a reality. Machines are getting smarter. You know that. And what's making it smarter? It's artificial intelligence, fundamentally. So what that means is these systems are being driven by machine learning. It's learning from the data. And it's using modeling techniques such as regression, clustering, decision tree, using supervised, unsupervised learning, as well as statistics and quantitative mathematical analysis. And all this intelligence, okay, is going to be very valuable. So if you're following IoT, hopefully you'll start to see something, which is 2015 was about IoT platforms, meaning how do we collect, gather data, and then do something with that data. 2016 is going to be about data analytics. The billion-dollar unicorns is all going to be coming from AI and machine learning. So you heard it from me. Now, speaking of intelligence, even connected cars are getting smarter. You didn't know that, right? Matter of fact, they're getting so smart they're going to start to talk back at you. So here's a dialogue with Google's autonomous car. Google, where's the nearest gas station? Right in front of you, Scott. Google, what's the fastest route home? The same way that you came, Scott. Google, what's the temperature like tomorrow? The average temperature for a polluted hot planet, Scott. Google, do I have to take an attitude? No, I just like answering the same questions every day. Part of that intelligence means that they will actually speak like us. So if you haven't heard, IBM Watson, Microsoft Cortana, Google Now, Amazon Echo, and even open source technologies such as Jasper are all becoming part of our daily lives, whether we know it or not. Natural language processing, or NLP, is a field that combines computer science, AI, and computational linguistics. I was going to say linguini, my apologies. I must be hungry. And it's concerned about the communication between computers and humans. And what it means is that you can actually have a conversation in a human fashion without actually explicitly programming it to get a response. Pretty exciting. So let's break down NLP in terms of some of the components or functionalities that drives NLP. I'm just going to cover just a couple here. One is automatic summation, which has to do with the fact that you get a block of text, and the system automatically provides a readable summary. Co-reference resolution is about the fact that you can take a sentence or a chunk of text and then be able to determine those words that references the same objects or entities. Discourse analysis is talking about being able to identify the relationship in terms of discourse relationship between sentences, such as an explanation, or elaboration, or contrast, for instance. By the way, this gentleman in the front here is starting to snore. My apologies. Sir, there's still a little bit of drool left here. Customers are going to expect more from you. if you think that you're doing great in terms of localization, they're going to say it's not good enough. I want it faster and I want it more intelligent. What we're seeing here, going back to what I was saying before earlier about the fact that wearables and IoT is collecting a lot of information in terms of your context, your location, your intent, your interest, your product favorability, and your engagement. And based on that information, it tailors a message. So if we're talking about campaign management system or CRM, it is not something static. You don't just put it in once. It better be able to be smart and morph to make sure that it communicates a message that's going to resonate with that person at that point in time, at that location. Just like you're seeing here. Haptic feedback on the phone, real-time messaging right there. When I interact with a product, this user didn't have to do anything. You get this, right? Okay, I'm just going to pass. So again, the point is that wearables provides this notion of immediacy, meaning I want it now. So if I'm traveling internationally, I don't want to have to search through an app. It should just automatically translate for me. That includes earbuds, that includes 3D VR glasses and so forth. So there's a sense of immediacy. And frankly, your consumers are not going to have the patience. They're not going to wait. I'm telling you, this is the future. They're going to be very demanding, just like your kids. And for some of you that are thinking, well, localization is really about websites and mobile. It is, but guess what? It's also changing very rapidly. As we talked about before, smartwatches, and then even smart clothing, AR, VR glasses, 3D avatars, connected TVs, digital signage, all of these have components of natural language processing or speech recognition, or facial recognition, or voice analysis. And moreover, when we get to IoT, a lot of these devices, frankly, do not have a display form factor, which means that there's nothing that you can actually push or touch or interact with. So a natural way to interact with these IoT devices in your home, as an example, is through natural speech. Now, there are companies like Words out of Europe that are working on an abstraction layer that's going to work on top of these apps, because you don't want to be toggling between 50 different apps to manage these IoT devices. And certainly, robots. And by the way, they figured out that Robot Pepper needed to be reprogrammed for Americans. It needed to be much more aggressive, much more sarcastic, and frankly, less of a pushover. So they're training the robot to study Jack Nicholson. Now here's a real dilemma, a real conundrum. I just recently spoke at Razorfish in New York City, and the advertising field is in a bit of an uproar. What's happening is they can't seem to crack the code when it comes to the millennials. Whether it's an ad blocker, that's even at the OS level, but frankly, they don't want to see your message, whether it's an ad or a contextual message of some sort. That's a problem when your job is localization, isn't it? So how do we actually get through the millennials, which are going to be the next dominant segment of buyers? I was supposed to speak in New York about luxury homes and purchases and how millennials are driving that in New York as an example. Well, anecdotally, one of the telecom carriers indicated that 80% of their traffic comes from Snapchat. And of those Snapchats, 50% contain emojis. Matter of fact, millennials even have their own language. And here are a few popular phrases that you should know so that when your kids speak to you, or when your younger coworkers speak to you at work, you can decode it. So here's the first one. The struggle is real. So that is in reference to the fact that, for example, my parents stopped paying the phone bill. The struggle is real. Stop it right now. Actually, they don't want you to stop. It's an expression, as in, you went to the gym 4 times? Stop it right now. I like this one. Sorry, I'm not sorry. I can't even. I know, right? I just can't. Can't even deal with. Can you not? I actually like this one on the bottom right. It's me! You grammarians out there are loving this, right? Like, did they go to school? It's like, what did you just pay for? Now, why am I talking to you about millennials and emojis? Because we are talking about a whole new level of localization that you never even thought about. I'm being very serious. What is universal? I bet you in this room there are probably easily 30, 50 different languages spoken. I myself speak 20 languages, mostly gibberish. Universal language is emotion. Emojis are a graphical representation of emotions. And as a society, what's happening is we've actually created another layer on top of the traditional communication. That's what we're talking about. And yes, by the way, if you're looking to the right, yes, it's true. That's one of their favorite emojis right here. You didn't think that you'd be hearing about poop emojis in an IoT presentation, did you? Surprise! And by the way, I kind of figured out by now that I probably won't be invited back. Even Porsche gets emojis. In their concept car, Mission Eeg, they have an emotion detecting camera built into the rear view mirror. And when you're driving, it can automatically detect if you're happy and turn that into an emoticon that's displayed on the instrument panel. And later, you can actually just share it out on social media, along with your speed, your route, and your speeding ticket. It's even gone further. This is an app called Chill. It is trying to communicate only through emoticons. It is a messaging app that's saying, we are at an entirely new era. We don't need words. We just need emoticons. By the way, for techies, you probably already know. Emoticons are great for programming, but emojis are not, especially vector ones. So what that means is when you see a coffee emoji, it means that you want to get together for coffee, as an example. By the way, I don't know, it's a little bit limiting from my perspective. All right, so I'm really excited. So this is the demo part. You thought you were going to have to sit? No. You're going to engage. I'm going to interact with you. So I need 3 volunteers from the audience that are incredibly expressive, unlike me, to come up here and play this game. I need 3 volunteers, please. It's going to be a lot of fun, I promise you. I promise you. So come on up. And what you're seeing, by the way, is an app that we're actually pushing out on the Apple Watch and iOS iPhone, where it actually takes your facial expression and your body language and your voice and automatically turns your emotion into an emoji. All right, so come on up, please. Unfortunately, it has to be projected, so it has to be done up here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please come on up. Yes, right up here. Great. Let me just make sure everything is working. Yep, great. Okay. So who do we have here? Let's introduce yourself.
Hello, me?
Welcome. And what do you like to eat? All right, great answer. And yes, introduce yourself.
I'm John, and I like to drink beer.
That's great.
I'm Adam, and I like food.
Food, wonderful. Great answer.
I
So,
especially like the Brazilian food.
steak, love it, right? Sword. All right, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to actually sample it for you, and hopefully you should be able to see it on the screen. And then I'll give all of you a chance to just get at least one, so you get the hang of it. And then here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a competition at the end. Whoever has the funniest expression and emoji is a winner. So here's how it goes. I simply push this emoji. I look into it. Joy. And you can actually see my face here. So give it a try one by one. So just simply go ahead, push that button, and then look into it. You can hold it yourself so you're closer to it. Put it right to your face. Just for your face, and then you can use your hands as well if you like. All right. I think we have a winner. Actually, in this case, it didn't recognize because it was a little bit too odd. So push that button, look right into it. And try and be very, very strict. Joy! I actually thought that was a little bit creepy, but that's okay. That's all right. How are you turn? And believe it or not, we can actually look through glasses as well. Here we go, Joy again. Fantastic. Okay, so we got the hang of it, right? So here's the real competition. And just to get a kick, I know there's some social media people here. I'm going to actually record this. And with their permission, may I? We can actually share on social media, and we'll get a lot of life out of it. So here we go. We're going to record. Yeah, I think it's recording. Okay. Your face. No, you got to push the button. Do it again until it registers. Yeah. You get it done. Joy. Nice. Simpson. Okay. Anger. By the way, you need some more hair, by the way. Okay, there you go. Joy! Wonderful. So we've got 2 George Simpson and 1 anger. So if I can have the contestants come down here, we're going to have a little bit of an applause-o-meter, so to speak. So if you just stand right over here, and I'll put my hand over them, and you applause for them if you think that they have a great expression and a corresponding emoji. So here we go. Okay, thank you. It's actually going to be free. You can actually download it on Apple Watch and so forth. It's called Sensibility. By the way, that's what happens when you raise your hand, so don't do that now. So give me 1 second while I toggle back to it. All right, so we're back. All right. Oh, where was I? Oh yes, I'm giving a keynote. I had an aunt who lived in Needles, California. And for those of you who've never heard of Needles, Needles is famous for eggs over easy on the sidewalk because it's so hot. Well, when you went into her house, it was like walking into a time capsule. I mean, literally, her appliances and furnishing were preserved from the 1960s. Nothing had changed. So naturally, when she opened up the pantry and offered me this soda, I politely refused. Well, many of us are kind of like my aunts, where we're used to doing things a certain way, and we don't like change, right? You raise your hand if you like change. Not too many people. Okay, you're lying. Well, it turns out that humans are not the only ones that resist change. Meet Shrek. Shrek is not really into grooming. Not a big groomer, no. So he hated nothing more than getting a groom. So he devised a plan. He was going to escape, and then he ended up living in local caves for about 6 years. Now, what Shrek didn't realize is that his resistance to change meant that his fur would be infested with fleas. He would have an extra 60 pounds of weight that he would have to carry, and he had trouble eating and moving. And frankly, the point is, sometimes we create our own baggage. We spend years honing our craft, developing knowledge and skills in a particular area. But when we're confronted with change, it's uncomfortable, and rightfully so. And then at the organizational level, change is sometimes perceived as the enemy. Because we're used to doing it a certain way, right? So what do? We continue to make investment into the same tools, same processes, while the rest of the world passes by. And by the way, that's Shrek emerging from the fruits. Yes, out of all the slides, 50 some odd slides that I have, this was my kid's favorite. Now you're probably wondering, but aren't robots and machines going to take over our jobs? Well, it turns out that they're actually not better than humans at everything. According to research, we're still better at common sense. And that explains why I leave the milk out and the refrigerator door open. And that extends to intuition. And certainly when it comes to human relationships, we're just better when it comes to this messy, complex aspects of people relationships. We're just better at making it messier. And finally, we just tell better jokes. So, if machines are not going to take our jobs, how can they actually help us? According to a Harvard Business Review article, the authors point to 3 things that they can help us with on a practical basis. First is the fact that they can actually help you with all the coordination, communication, information gathering, things that's fairly mundane and time-consuming, so that you can be much more efficient and focus on the things that's important to you. By the way, that means surfing the web and finding other distractions. Secondly, they will contain specialized data and information, like AI, that we talked about. So that means that experts can rely on it, including medical information, to make better decisions more quickly. And lastly, the information that's gathered from these machines and systems will help inform us, which then means faster velocity in terms of innovation, creation, product, and so forth. So that's how they can help us. Now what you're seeing here is a list, and I'll tell you a little story. When I was at Razorfish in New York a couple of weeks ago, I asked the chief operating officer for international, and I asked him, what is the biggest challenge that you face and your clients face? And he said, when he speaks with CMOs from around the world, the biggest challenge that he and they see is the fact that marketing as an organization, as a functional group, is undergoing some vast fundamental changes. They know it. But the problem is that unless it's being driven down by the CEO or the CMO, that change is never going to happen. Now, one of those areas has to do with skill sets. And what you're seeing here on the left side are some of the more common marketing skill sets. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, because typically localization are going to fall within the marketing function, even if you're on the buyer or the sell side, as an example. So it's things like localization, the things that you do already. It's the auto translation of social media. It's the application of text sentiment analysis and CMS and CRM. Most of the things that you should probably already know and do on a regular basis. Now, what you're seeing on the right side, on the other hand, are the skills that's needed for the future. It's the wearables, it's the IoT, it's the advanced data analytics. I'll give you just a minute to take a look at that. Now, I'm not advocating that you become data modelers, program in Python, C++, and work with R. That's not what I'm asking you. What I'm saying is, even if you work with data scientists, they're going to ask you, what insights do you want from this data? And why do you want it? And then, of course, the question they're going to definitely ask is, where are you going to source this data that I need to be able to analyze? So the point is, even if we're not programming this outright, we need to be familiar with these concepts so that we can do our jobs better. Because hopefully, if I've done my job today, you know that there is a massive change that's coming. And I don't want you to be unprepared for it. IoT is not a distant trend. It is not just for industries and manufacturing. It will revolutionize your industry and your job function. It is a massive tidal wave that's coming, whether you like it or not. And you can choose to be swallowed up by it, or you can choose to master it and define new opportunities. The fact that you're here means that you're vested in your interest, in your success. You want to succeed. You are the leaders of this industry. And that's why you're spending the time today. And I believe that you can master this. So with that said, let's go make it happen. Thank you.